Point number 4 is simply, this is your classroom. You cannot be somebody else. And with that being the case, there's no other teacher that's like you. So similar to what we talked about in the last slide where we said to be yourself, recognize that this is your classroom. Within these 4 walls, you are going to be teaching the students what you feel is best for them to be successful in this profession as a barber or cosmetologist. Look at this picture right here. What do you think it means? Now, you can get different interpretations from it, and that's what makes pictures so unique, I should say. But within your hands, in a figurative sense, you recognize the fact that you are holding the hearts and the minds academically and practically as barbers and cosmetology students here right in your hand or in your classroom. Now, with that being the case, it's up to you to be able to carve out a niche for yourself, to be able to give the students exactly what it is that you want them to get to make them successful. So recognize that this is your classroom. Whatever other instructors or teachers tend to do in theirs is up to them. You aren't them and they aren't you. Some other points to keep in mind. You are responsible for your classroom. This is something I had to learn. The reason why I say that is because there were many times as I started to teach that I'd run into some situations where I wasn't quite sure really how to handle different situations that may come up. And perhaps, for instance, there might be a student who's having some issues at home. How do I handle that? Is there anything that I can do beyond just the typical instructor-teacher relationship? Perhaps I shouldn't say perhaps because it actually happened. There was times when I would have a student here and there that would give me problems within my classroom. Now, do I just kick the student out and tell them to go home? Or should I try to minimize the situation within the classroom? Whenever I ran into these problems or these situations, I would go and seek the help of more experienced instructors. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But ultimately, you are responsible for what takes place in your classroom. So even though you want to get advice or you want to get an understanding of what's the best way to handle some situations, you want to make sure that you recognize that ultimately the decision is up to you what happens. The students are looking to you for leadership. The students are looking to you for guidance. So whatever it is that you're doing in regards to your students, education-wise, discipline-wise, advisement-wise, or even in terms of teaching or instructing them, it's your classroom, it's your clinic floor, so you set the tone. This last point says that students can't influence your course. Or I should say they shouldn't, or they couldn't. Let me rephrase that. And I'm not even going to edit this out because I'm really just being honest here. Students cannot influence the course that you have charted. Stand by your decisions. Now, the reason why I actually left that in is because I want you to be realistic here. I want you to really think about this. If you have an outline in mind, you're prepared, as we've talked about in the first few slides. How is it possible that you're going to allow a student or another teacher or another instructor to tell you how to teach in your classroom? Again, you have to be confident in yourself and your ability to be able to make sure that you are giving the students what they need. So a student or instructor shouldn't cause you to deviate from what your plan is. They shouldn't cause you to get off course or off track of from what it is that you're trying to impart into your students. Now, none of us are perfect, and I didn't handle every situation perfectly. But over time, you will realize that you have to set the tone, you set the standard. You're the leader in the classroom, and you're helping to facilitate learning. Okay? On top of that, too, you want to make sure that you stand by your decisions. If there's a student perhaps that has to be removed from the class because he just simply is disrupting too much of that learning environment, then you stand by that decision. Don't second guess yourself. And again, as I mentioned before, you won't necessarily always make the perfect decision. But if you feel that you're doing what's right for the best of the students in terms of their learning, that's what matters most. So remember, this is your classroom. And within those 4 walls, or within that lab floor, that's your domain to be able to make sure that the students are getting exactly what it is they want, free of any distractions, because the students know that you have what's best in mind for them and their education and their future in our industry.